the American League Championship. I don't believe it. It just continues. My, oh my.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Oh, drives one. Right field. Did he do it? He did. Are you kidding me? Let's go.
I fall asleep and wake up to a podcast recorded without me. Shame on you, Casey Bellin. Shame on you, Joe Doyle. I couldn't believe it. I felt left out all week. But here we are, the FSS Plus podcast. Jason Churchill, Joe Doyle, Casey Bellin. I listened to that show, guys. It was good. And yes, I was just being lazy. You were right the first time, Joe. I was just being lazy. I was out. I went to a football game in Palo Alto, California, of all places. It was a terrible game. The team favored by 27 let the game, kind of get away from them a little bit, and it was a lot closer than it should have been. So it was frustrating. But yeah, I was just you had it right the first time. I was just essentially being lazy. So really good instincts. I'm not sure if I told you guys that's what I was doing, but that's some good instincts there, Joe.
Who granted you lazy. PTO?
Yeah, so here's the way I do. This is a fun conversation for a podcast that the boss can actually listen to anytime he feels like. Here's the way PTO works at Future Star Series. There's no such thing. So what you have to do is work that day. You travel, you work, you work, you travel, you travel, you work, you go do fun stuff, you work. And then it doesn't help to text the boss every once in a while. Just to touch base so he knows you're thinking about him. That usually works pretty well. Lots to get to today. The Texas Rangers obviously win the World Series in 5 games over the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think before the show, just as I kicked in here to the recording, I believe, Casey, I heard you mention the World Series got to a point where you were just like, let's just get this over with. Let's get to the off season, right? Did it really take that long, by the way? Did it take that long, or were you, because I was already there. I mean, once the LCS just came out, I was like, all right, there's going to be days without baseball at all. And these games are not going to start at convenient times for me. I have too much else going on, where I was just like, can we just fast forward to the hot stove? Did it really take to like game 4 or 5 for you to feel that way, Case?
Yeah, it was like game 3, because that's when I started feeling like it wasn't a competitive series. I thought there was a lot of competitive series throughout the playoffs. So it kept me interested. And then game 3 of the World Series, I was like, yeah, I think this is pretty much over.
This is pretty much done. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. I was trying to figure out why people couldn't get into this series. I mean, I watched every game, but even I was sitting there thinking I would be okay if this went 5 games.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know, Corey Seager's compelling. Corbin Carroll's compelling. There's a Cinderella.
I think the thing though, like when we look at things like ratings, which is a terrible way to judge how good an actual World Series was or wasn't, but not that you guys were doing that, but when you look at ratings, like think about the people that are contributing to those ratings. They're basic general households. They're not necessarily sports fans. So to pull those people in, what do you need? You need stars and you need big markets. Now Texas is in a big market. They're in Dallas. Arizona, they're in Phoenix. But what about the Arizona Diamondbacks is going to grab the casual fan? Like, we know Corbin Carroll is really good. We know Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen are really good. Most of the country, even baseball fans, aren't really enthralled with any of those players. Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, maybe Adolis Garcia now, sure. But Arizona, I can understand them not drawing. They got we'll talk about the Diamondbacks. That's one of the things we're going to get to today. The Diamondbacks and the Phillies, just like everybody else, have a list of things that they probably need to get to over the offseason to I don't know, for lack of a better way to say it, improve their shot next year. How did the Diamondbacks take the next step? What do the Phillies do? What are they missing? We'll have that conversation a little bit later. And free agency. So now that the World Series is over, early next week, so there's this 5-day, this ridiculous, stupid, meaningless, I think, 5-day grace period before free agents can actually sign with other clubs. So I think it starts, I think it's Monday. Is it Monday, Joe? where they can sign. I think it's Monday where they can start signing.
It's Monday.
So I expect Shohei Ohtani to sign with the Kansas City Royals on Tuesday. I think he's going to make people wait 24 hours and he's going to sign with the Royals. Obviously, that's not happening. Lots of other stuff going on this one too. If you're if you dig into the off season, one of the things you should do if you don't already, Google MLB important off-season dates, and you'll get somebody to list you and give you all the deadlines for the qualifying offer, the deadline for players to accept or decline the qualifying offer, the arbitration tender deadline, things like that. Those are really important things to know. And I believe, Joe, our favorite, setting up our favorite off-season activity, our favorite off-season event, the Rule 5 draft, I believe the 14th is when 40-man rosters have to be set. So we're going to get some in the next couple of weeks. We're going to get some activity, like we've seen, like I forgot about this, but last year we had, when talking about qualifying offers, the Dodgers did not tender Cody Bellinger the qualifying offer last year.
Correct.
They let him roll. So, and he was struggling. So really interesting situation. There was another big one that got let go too. I can't remember who it was, but I imagine the Cubs are going to do that this year, awaiting Bellinger opting out of his contract, essentially declining his half of the mutual option and hitting. But I imagine the Cubs are going to tender him there. So we're going to get some activity here, and we're going to get some option decisions coming up. We're going to get some player options. Marcus Stroman, I think, is a big one, Joe. What is it? $21 million for Stroman. Like, I mean, he could take that, or he could, opt out of it and probably get 2 or 3 years and, maybe $15+ million. I tend to think he's going to opt out of that. So we're going to get some activity for sure on the free agent front, and teams can make trades now. They don't have to wait till Monday to make trades. And if you live in a smaller market area, one thing you should look for right now, if you're Kansas City, you're Pittsburgh, you're Cincinnati, even Seattle, because they like to operate like a small market team for some reason, you can make waiver claims. That's going to be your fun for the next 4 or 5 days until free agency starts. And for some of those teams, that's going to be your fun for the entire offseason. So disappointed in the World Series. I think getting 6 and 7 game series is meaningful, even if the ratings aren't great. I just think every opportunity baseball has to be front and center in the sports world on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday or something like that is good for the game, even if the ratings are down, even if it's, they're not losing fans. That's just viewership of the World Series. And I just think, Monday night, Saturday, Sunday, maybe not with football going on, but every other day of the week is a little bit of a missed opportunity. So I was disappointed in that. How did you view the postseason as a whole? Before we dive into the Diamondbacks and the Phillies and free agency a little bit more, was it I wasn't all that compelled by this postseason as a whole. There were a lot of series where there was domination. I think it would have been actually better had the Dodgers gone a little further. Not that it wasn't fun that the Diamondbacks were the team to oust the team at the top, but I thought it was a very average at best postseason overall for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of like captivation, it was probably below average. And I'm not really sure. Maybe it was Major League Baseball has an issue right now in terms of identifying and marketing like big time pitchers. And maybe that's one of the issues with, these 5 and dive metas and openers and things like that. Like, I mean, I'd say one of the biggest storylines from this postseason was Clayton Kershaw's 1 inning outing or 1 out outing where he gave up like 6 or 7 runs. Like, Max Scherzer didn't throw. Jacob deGrom's been out all year. Justin Verlander was largely vanilla this postseason. Clayton Kershaw was bad, and now he's hurt, more hurt, I should say. Yeah, I think Major League Baseball has a marketing issue right now with some of its biggest stars, and when you don't, like, I think they were really leaning hard on Bryce Harper carrying the league through the postseason because Judge wasn't there, and Rafi Devers wasn't there, and Not even Pete Alonso wasn't there. So seems like there's
And
a
I
bit
think
of an
the
issue right now,
markets, I think the markets too, in addition to the players, I think even
without
not that it,
question.
not that it happens, but when you get the Mets or the Cubs or the Dodgers in it, there's just, it's a bigger, a bigger market that's naturally just the ratings are going to go up just because the market that cares about that particular team is larger.
Yeah.
I mean, even Atlanta, they have a pretty large market. It's not just about the size of the city, the population of the city, but the number of people in the Atlanta region that are Braves fans is a lot bigger than the number of people anywhere that are Diamondbacks fans. So right then and there, if the National League was represented by even the Braves, let alone the Dodgers and the Mets, the ratings go up. But yeah, I just thought from an entertainment standpoint, I wasn't even compelled to watch the games live. It was weird, man. It's like, lifelong baseball. It was just very strange.
I don't know if they sunk as much money into marketing. It felt like, it almost felt to me like there were more games on TNT this year, and it felt like an afterthought. And I think back really quickly, I think back to like 2020 or 2021 when Randy Arozarena had that unbelievable postseason, right? And it's all anybody could talk about. And that's Tampa. So how did Randy Arozarena truly become a household name that postseason? And it seemed so forced to turn Adolis Garcia into this like league star. I still don't feel like Adolis Garcia is this star, and he had one of the greatest postseasons in the history of the sport. Just a strange postseason.
Yeah, he did. What, he had eight homers in that series and didn't even play the last couple of games.
I know he broke the record for postseason RBIs. I think he had 23 RBIs, and he missed the last game.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, he hit 323 with 8 homers, 22 RBI. That's a big postseason. Crazy. I read another thing the other day that was crazy. We don't have to talk about it. I just want to throw it out there. Maybe some fans are unaware. Marcus Semien. I think you guys know what I'm getting at. Marcus Semien had more plate appearances this year than I think anyone has had in like a very, very long time. I can't remember what the exact statistic is, but including the postseason, he had 835 plate appearances. And I think that's only happened one other time ever. It's weird. I think maybe it might be more stranger to think that, wait, somebody a long time ago had 830 some plate appearances in a game, including the postseason. There weren't wild card series. There weren't LDS series, 80 years ago. It was just, you play your 154 game season and then you roll into the World Series. That was the way that worked back then. We didn't even have LCS back then for players to do that. But a really strong season from Marcus Semien, and you stay on the field. You play 162 games. You get over 750 plate appearances in the regular season. Your team goes to the World Series. But even though the series only went 5, 835 plate appearances. We're used to talking about you get this player, you give him 500 at bats. That's not even really. That's like 130 games, 140 games worth. And Semien had 835. I just thought that was
who was the most before? Oh, of course, man. He's right on it. Lenny
Casey
Dykstra.
Bellin right on it. Lenny Dykstra. Yeah.
Casey. I was gonna say I had 2 guesses. I was gonna say Joe Morgan because of the Big Red Machine.
Sure.
And then I was going to say, who's the name of that second baseman for the Yankees during their dynasty? I guess Bernie Williams would have been a good guess, but Alfonso Soriano was going to be my other guess.
Oh, sure, batting lead off a lot. Yeah.
But Lenny Dykstra, good pull.
It's crazy. Yeah, and I think regular season plate appearance wise, I think there was a Jimmy Rollins season maybe 15 years ago. That's the regular season record, and it was like 775 or something like that. It's crazy. And then Semien wasn't even close to that, this year. He's 25 away from that. But yeah, it's very strange. Yeah, Casey rolling out the numbers here. Pete Rose had 811 in 1975.
Oh, I was on to the right. I was on to it, man.
Yeah, so we go like 50 years ago, and it's remarkable because again, that we didn't have all these extra series, So yeah, but you get a leadoff type guy, Semien leadoff guy, Dykstra leadoff guy, Pete Rose leadoff guy, Jimmy Rollins led off a lot. So certainly makes tons of say. Is there a power hit? I'm looking at the regular season list right now. You don't really get down to a true power hitter in terms of most plate appearances in a season until Mo Vaughn in 1996.
Yes.
Mo Vaughn.
I love Mo Vaughn.
752 plate appearances in 1996. Absolutely crazy. So, all right. So the Diamondbacks fall a little short. When you look at that team, Joe Doyle, I don't think it screams World Series caliber to anyone. And I think if you even ask the leaders of that organization, yeah, we understand that, this isn't necessarily your typical World Series roster, just, on the surface, at least. Sometimes you can look and go, okay, you got a star there. You got a couple of all-stars here. There's a good balance, a good mix. You have some depth. That's not what that Diamondbacks roster looks like. When you look at that roster, what are some things that stick out? So if you're running the Diamondbacks, what are your priorities this winter in terms of adding to the roster specifically?
I think you got to start with the pitching staff, right? I mean, Zach Gallen is a very talented player, but he struggled in the postseason, and they still ended up where they were. Merrill Kelly is going to be 36 next year. That blew my mind when I saw his age, kind of watching him start.
Yeah, has he really been around that long?
Is the thing. He debuted at 29.
I guess that would do it.
That's nuts. Yeah, but I mean, they've got some, Brandon Pfaadt, I think, is going to be a pretty solid mid-rotation guy in time. Beyond that, like, Arizona doesn't have the pitching staff to repeat what they did this year, next year, in my opinion, especially playing in the NL West with Dodgers. Giants aren't going to be a pushover. And, it's hard to say the Padres are going to be worse than what they were this past year. So,
but I'm going to say it anyway.
They might be. But no, that offense should continue to get better. Like Gabriel Moreno, I was actually pretty critical of that trade when it went through. Gabriel Moreno looks like he's going to be a stud, like one of the top 10 catchers in baseball going forward, and they control him forever. Jordan Lawler got a cup of tea. Ketel Marte is coming back. Corbin Carroll, of course. I love the tandem of Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, and Alec Thomas in the outfield. That's so much speed. Yeah. But I think the thing with Arizona is going to be they're going to have to decide what direction they want to go with this payroll, because I believe there's only one more year of Christian Walker. Yep. And that's kind of a big decision to make if you want to pay that guy. I don't know what he's owed, like 12, 13 mil.
And he's not that young. He's north of 30 already. So, yeah, exactly. What do you exactly want to do with your payroll in terms of, veteran players that are making the big arbitration dollars and free agent dollars versus what you have in the farm system, which was going to be my next question to you, Joe. What do the Diamondbacks have on the farm system that realistically could help them with some level of impact in 2023 beyond, I'll say, Jordan Lawler? Obviously he made his debut this year. You would think to some extent there could be some expectation that he'd be able to help them next year. What else do they have down on the farm? You mentioned pitching. Is there any pitching that's anywhere near the major leagues for them?
No. I mean, Slade Ciccone got some time this year. He might have gotten hurt. I'm trying to remember how his season actually ended, but they don't have a whole lot in terms of reinforcements that's on the way. They got some guys down the list like Gilbert Diaz who might get some time next season, and I think Blake Walston will probably have to take on an added role, but he's largely kind of struggled throughout his minor league career as a former first-round pick. They're going to have to either make a trade for some pitching, or they're going to have to, open their pocketbooks. And the Diamondbacks have never been an organization that have really expanded the wallet too much. So I think they could be, despite, this is the craziest thing. It's kind of like the 2003 Florida Marlins. Like, despite going to the World Series, it wouldn't totally stun me if the Diamondbacks moved a few pieces off of their big league roster to try and save themselves pitching going forward.
Right. So you mentioned Christian Walker. That might be a guy they move because he's got 1 year left. And then they go out on the market and maybe sign a guy that's as good or better for maybe even a little cheaper, or at least to be able to control that guy and plan around him a little bit more. Where are you with a guy like Ketel Marte? He's had some injuries in the past. When he's been healthy for 140 plus games, he's a pretty good player and can certainly handle second base, can run, switch hitters, got a little bit of pop. Like, that's a good player. If you're the Diamondbacks with a guy like Marte, do you see what that looks like on the trade market and see if you can, because there's not a lot of second baseman shortstop this year. That was last winter where the middle infielders were a big thing with those big four. This year it's a little bit different. Do you just at least see what you can get for Ketel Marte? Maybe shop him around a little bit.
I think you have to at least listen. They're going to have to replace Lourdes Gurriel Jr. too. I mean, this offense was really good this year, but the heavy lifting was done by Corbin Carroll, who's coming back, Christian Walker, and Ketel Marte. And I think you're already down Gurriel. You would imagine you're down Gurriel. I'm sure he's going to command something of a $16-17 million contract for 4 years from someone, right? So you're going to have to replace that offense. If you get rid of Ketel Marte too, all of a sudden you're kind of searching for answers at the plate and searching for how you're going to score those runs. I will say Christian Walker would probably be the one that I would think would be moved just because he's expensive and it's only 1 year left. And his baseball card was really carried by the home runs. He wasn't a terribly efficient player. They do have Ivan Melendez, who could be available here towards the end of 2024. He's a really interesting player who's got a lot of similarities with Christian Walker. But yeah, I mean, the one that I kind of think of as an option for them that I would consider is, so you have Corbin Carroll, you have Jake McCarthy, you have Alec Thomas. You've got a great athletic outfield for the foreseeable future. It's been a tough go of it for Drew Jones, both in terms of durability and in terms of swing mechanics. There's a lot of work to do, but
he's a ways away.
He's a ways away. He's got a lot of prospect pedigree. And I think the idea of moving him for a pitcher or moving him for something that plays on the dirt would probably interest some teams that wish they could have been up at the top of the first round there in 2022.
Right. Ketel Marte, by the way, owed $16 million a year in 2025 and 2026. So if you add that to the 13 he's going to make in 2024 and the 14 he's going to make in 2027, it's 4 years. And I believe that's $59 million plus a $3 million buyout for 2028. He will be 30. This season was his age 29 season. I think he just turned 30. So he just turned 30 during the postseason. So next year will be his age. So if you're going to move Marte, the sooner the better, I would imagine. But with his injury history, that might also be tough. And you're right. He's kind of an igniter for them. He's kind of at the top of that second tier of offensive producers in a lineup that every team needs. And if you do trade Walker, what does the rest of that lineup look like? So from a pitching standpoint, if they're not going to spend money, like this is almost a side combo here, but the Diamondbacks are allowing me to bring it up. There's some names on the free agent market. I think it's not a good free agent class in general, but there's some pretty interesting starting pitchers on the market. And even when you get below those top guys, the Aaron Nolas and the and Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and Sonny Gray and I think some are assuming that Eduardo Rodriguez opts out in Detroit, which he should to get more money. Shohei Ohtani obviously at the top won't pitch in 2024, but he can be considered the two Japanese guys, Yamamoto and Imanaga, also offering depth somewhere near the top and certainly in the middle of the rotation. But there's a lot of guys below those top guys that you can kind of rely on to some level. You look around, you get Lucas Giolito is really interesting. Like it's really difficult to look at him and say, well, he probably he could decide to just take a 1-year deal and then go back out on the market at 30 years old because he thinks he could do better next year because it's a little bit of a flooded market. But otherwise, I could see somebody like Lucas Giolito getting 5 years this year at 15 to 20 million, maybe getting a Taiwan Walker, Jameson Tyone type deal, or even a little bit better. You can go down to like Jack Flaherty's interested. Had some injury issues, but Michael Wacha has an option that needs to be dealt with the San Diego Padres. We talked about Kyle Hendricks. The team, what is it, a $16 million option for Hendricks? We know what his history is like. Has been great lately, had a little bit of an injury. Seth Lugo has made a pretty decent transition to full-time starter at 33 years old. So he's really interesting. I actually think one of the more underrated guys on the free agent market right now is Sean Manaea. Like I know he pitched in relief to some extent. Some of that was to help him stay healthy. And some of that was because he wasn't performing all that great. But overall, he has just as good a 3-year resume as some of these other second tier starters that we're talking about. It's a pretty good, then we could throw in guys like Kyle Gibson and another interesting one with some upside, even though it comes with some risk, is Luis Severino. And then we throw in the Andrew Haney's and Alex Woods and Ryu and James Paxton, guys that have been hurt, guys whose performances kind of been all over the map. But there are a lot of opportunities for a team like the Diamondbacks to say, hey, let's identify a guy that we really like, turn him into something better than he's ever been, or let's get the best out. And we know who the pitching coach is in Arizona and what he's been teaching that organization. And that's Brent Strom. I mean, you look at what the Astros have done the last several years. Brent Strom is as big a part of that as pretty much just about anybody. Really interesting pitching opportunity, I think, this winter for a team like the Diamondbacks, Joe.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you could go even further down the list. This is actually a really good year for free agent pitching. Carlos Carrasco, I think, is kind of an underrated name. He kind of got buried a little bit in New York. He was hurt for a lot of the year, but I think he would be a really interesting guy just in terms of the ability to innately spin the ball and throw the slider. Like, that's a guy that I think Brent Strom could really kind of pull the most out of. And, Michael Lorenzen out of Philly kind of turned his entire career around this season, and especially on the second half. He's another guy that I think would make a lot of sense for them. So
Ross Stripling is another one that comes to mind for Arizona.
Ross Stripling. I mean, I've liked Jacob Junis for a long time. I know that he can really spin the baseball, and he's really struggled where he's been, San Francisco and Kansas City, but he's got some pieces, right? So I think with Arizona, I do wonder how gun shy they're going to be after dropping so much money on Madison Bumgarner for it not to work out. I think they're probably going to be more in the 3-year deal type of ranges. The James Paxtons, maybe the Seth Lugos, get Martin Perez. Like, those guys probably are all over the 3-year market. But this is, if there was ever a year to supplement your rotation with a ton of different creative ways, this is the year to do it. The biggest thing with Arizona is going to be, how do they replace Gurriel? And, do they want to kind of do another prospect for prospect trade, a Drew Jones for a pitcher or something like that, just to give themselves something coming, because there's really not a lot on the way in terms of pitching.
They did really well on that Dalton Varsho deal. Varsho did not have a good year, and I'm not just assuming that he's done having good years, but they get Moreno, they get Gurriel for a year. It really worked out for them. That ended up being a really good looking deal for the Diamondbacks. Martin Perez, you mentioned Martin Perez. He's really interesting. Now, he lost his rotation spot in Texas, but Martin Perez is one of those guys like Merrill Kelly a little bit, but just in the opposite way. It feels like Martin Perez has been around for 25 years. He's only 32 years. He's gonna be 33 in April. And while he was up and down, mostly down for the most part, and got hit a little bit in 2023, and over the course of his career, he's been decidedly mediocre. But I always will look back to that 2022 season when he was one of the better left-handers in baseball and got to almost 200 innings and put up a 4-win season. I imagine there are some arms out there, some pitching coaches out there that look at arms like this and say, I can get him back to where he was in 2022. And I just wonder if Arizona's not one of those teams. So really interesting. I do think, by the way, when you look at Arizona, a lot of flaws in that on that roster, obviously, but and we talked about the need for pitching to get deeper there, maybe to get a little bit more impact there in the bullpen as well. It's not like that bullpen is flush with like a bunch of automatic outs. But when you look at, as a team, offensively what they're doing, and what they did this year, it wasn't exactly a juggernaut, right? Like, even with Christian Walker and Ketel Marte and those guys in the line, they were very kind of, what do the kids say these days? They were pretty mid, and they rank pretty much right in the middle of the pack in Major League Baseball in terms of runs scored. And despite that environment being conducive to offense. So I imagine they at least try to go out and they look at that market and try to take a stab at like a 1 or a 2 year guy. If they do something with Walker, Joe, they do. There are first base options out there. You can go with a Josh Bell. You get a switch hitter in there who's, had a good year. He had a pretty good final 2 months with the Miami Marlins. He could be out there on the market. Rhys Hoskins is a really interesting first base option, who's basically Christian Walker, but a couple of years younger that you could probably get on a 1-year deal. So there are some guys out there that could make a lot of sense for the Diamondbacks to add to that roster. But positionally, is there when you look on that field, obviously the outfield is set. Whatever they do at first base, Ketel Marte at second. We know Jordan Lawler is the future at shortstop, or at least to start his career. Who's the third baseman on this team long term?
I mean, your guess is as good as mine, man. I think it's probably gonna have to come from the outside. I mean, De Los Santos has played third. I don't necessarily see him as a third baseman. He's pretty stiff over there. AJ Vukovic is more of a bat over a defender. Man, I remember Vukovic from high school. I've been doing this for a while now.
You feeling old right now, Joe?
Golly. Yeah. I don't know, man. There's some options at third base over there. I don't see anybody that's a surefire bet to play the position.
Right.
And maybe they're a surprise team for a guy like Matt Chapman. It wouldn't totally surprise me. They've doled out single big contracts in the past.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because Chapman's not a spring chicken. He does have the injury history. He wasn't great last year. He started off really well and then cooled off a little bit. Obviously can play the position really, really well. So we're not talking about like 8 years and $200 million or anything. And I just wonder if he might fall into the category of affordable for a team like the Diamondbacks. Really interesting potential developing situation on that infield. If they think Jordan Lawler is ready, Perdomo is a pretty good little player. I'm not saying he's great, but might they do what the Baltimore Orioles did some years ago and say, hey, let's just have Lawler play third base at least for a year, and then we'll evaluate. Do you think Lawler makes the opening day roster? Is Lawler an opening day roster guy next year?
Lawler doesn't project terribly great for me at third base, just in terms of and I know you've talked about this before, teams don't need to have impact at the hot corner, but Arizona doesn't have a ton of impact at other places on the field. Like Corbin Carroll, yes. Jake McCarthy and Alec Thomas are not impact bats. They're really good players.
You're talking about run production. You're talking about
I'm talking about
damage to the baseball, hit the ball out of the park, hit in the gap, extra base hits.
Yeah, I mean, Perdomo's not going to give that to you. You do get that at second base with Ketel Marte, but Lawler's glove has always been more interesting than his bat to me. I think he's a solid big league regular, 2.5 win, 2.5 win third baseman once he gets settled in over there. But man, it feels like such a waste to put him over at third base. Maybe that's another reason to consider moving Ketel Marte is you can move Lawler to second base and use his abilities up the middle and profile him a little bit better there. And maybe you can get more of a prototype third baseman to play that position for Marte. So yeah, man, it's a weird roster that certainly overachieved in 2023. And I think they're going to have a difficult time. You remember 2020 when the Miami Marlins went to the playoffs?
I don't remember 2020.
I try to forget it too. But do you remember how the Miami Marlins went it was 33-27 or something, surprised the hell out of everyone. Not a good team. I don't think Arizona is going to see that big of a drop back in 2024, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if this team went 76-86. Would it surprise you? Not at all.
No, I was actually just going to ask you, do you kind of look at them as a team that's clearly on the ascent? And I don't necessarily think it's that clear. I think they're going to have to do some things to assure that, especially in that division where, Colorado is Colorado, but the Dodgers are the Dodgers, the Padres are the Padres. As mediocre as they are, it's still a team that has the potential to win 79 games. No, I'm kidding. That team talent wise is a 90+ win team. So, and the Giants seem like a team that just refuses to rebuild. And I expect them to be very active in free agency. So that division is tough. And now with the more balanced schedule, even when you're in a weak division, you can't take advantage of it like you used to. So Arizona's I could see them taking a step back, not only in the win column, but that probably leaves them out of the postseason too. So they're going to have to do some things, and we're going to have to see some guys rise.
I'll add one other thing, just because I think it's important reference here. Let's look at the run differential really quick, just so I have it up.
Ooh,
So,
my favorite thing.
well, I mean, it's worth something, right? It does kind of median out over 162 games. They had a negative 15 run differential, and
Mm,
their Pythagorean is 80 and 82.
yeah.
So I, just based on history, they were probably more of a 500 team than they were an 84 and what was it, 84 and 78. Is that
Mhm.
how they got in?
Yep.
So yeah, man, like they're gonna have a really interesting offseason, but it wouldn't surprise me if I'm not gonna use the term blow it up, but it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of, shook the tree a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. The Phillies, the Philadelphia Phillies, who I think they were the heavy favorite in that series in the LCS. And I think this is a little bit of a cleaner conversation because we look at that Phillies roster and you go, what do they got to do to get back? Probably not a lot necessarily, but I expect them to be quite different next year. Reese Hoskins is a free agent. They probably
Aaron Nola.
could use another bat. Aaron Nola's the big one. It sounds like they're going to try to bring him back, but how much do they want to spend on a 30-plus-year-old pitcher? They do have some guys down on the farm that are within a year or two of the big leagues, but there's some injuries also going on with a few of those guys. So who knows what their ETA is? I expect Philly to add a starter to that rotation, a mid-rotation or better starter, and I expect
Definitely.
them to fill one of their open spots in their lineup with a clear everyday player. So when you look at that, Rod, like who fits, like who stands out to you when you think about the free agents out there and what the first guy I think of, I got to be honest with you, is Eduardo Rodriguez. You had a lefty there. Eduardo, if he opts out, he's a guy that wants to stay on the East Coast. He has some experience in bigger markets. He played in Boston. He's played in Detroit now. That's one guy that stands out. But I think any of those big name pitchers, including Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Sonny Gray, Aaron Nola, and the Japanese pitcher, which we probably should talk about here in a little bit, I think they all could fit in Philadelphia. And I think that's probably their priority at this point.
Yeah, the guy that stands out for me is Jordan Montgomery, and I kind of think the same way as you. Like you look at that team: Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Taiwan Walker, Strom. They've got a lot of righties, right? And the only thing they really have coming: Andrew Painter, Mick Abel. They've got some really high profile righties coming. I think you could really balance that rotation with a Jordan Montgomery or an Eduardo Rodriguez or there's a lot of quality lefties. Blake Snell is out there. He's going to command a pretty penny. Hell, I don't trust the Phillies to get the most out of Andrew Haney, but Andrew Haney and Martin Perez both work as potential number 4s in that rotation. So the Phillies are always kind of tough. And the thing that I like talking about the Phillies is Dave Dombrowski, nothing's out the window.
Yeah.
He'll pay anyone.
The modern day Pat Gillick. He's just a hired gun. Come in, finish it off, win a World
That's
Series.
right.
That's it.
That's right. He's just a spin man. So I think they could go a number of different directions.
And they're starting the offseason, by the way. I believe their 2024 payroll projects considerably over $200 million already. I think they ended this year just under 250. So they're a team that will stretch beyond the luxury tax. They did it last year. We'll see how aggressive they want to be in doing that this year. And they've done it with big name guys. Zach Wheeler, free agent pickup. Bryce Harper, free agent pickup. Trey Turner, free agent pickup. They've been pretty aggressive on that. They do have some younger guys in that lineup that are starting to play at the big league level. But yeah, it seems like if you're thinking about the Phillies beyond that starting staff, I start thinking about some of these short-term, offensive guys that I might be able to get for 2 or 3 years, or even 1 year, to be honest with you. I think even like bringing Reese Hoskins back, makes some sense. I think Matt Chapman makes some sense. And then you slide Bohm over to first, or you move Bohm. He doesn't really fit. He doesn't really profile that well at either corner anyway, just because he doesn't hit for a bunch of power. But I even think a pure DH like JD Martinez could make sense for a team like the Phillies. They may want to do something different in their outfield, though. I think that's with Harper in the arm. Don't really know what they're thinking there. In center field with Marsh, I know they got a young guy that can play out there as well. They might want to go out and get one of the better corner outfielders on the market, whoever you think that is. Let's just elephant in the room. Are the Phillies a team that you think Shohei Ohtani fits?
No.
In both directions? Like if it's Philly, sure, the player fits. But if you're Shohei, you just think Philly's just it does seem like the opposite of what he'd be looking for. Yeah.
Well, and not only that, I mean, I think we have to kind of look a little realistically. You've got 28 million, and it's only going to climb for Trey Turner. You got 26 million for Harper. You got 25 million for Realmuto. You got 25 million for Zach Wheeler. You got 20 million, 18. I mean, they've got so much money. Hell, they're still paying Scott Kingery 13 million,
which is amazingly shameful.
It's amazing.
But
no, I look at it like this: like the Phillies are at, by rough estimations, this is Sport Track, they're already looking at $237 million for the luxury tax payroll. They've never exceeded the $40 million overage that costs them 10 spots in the draft.
Right.
And I don't know
pretty
if they're
key level. Yeah.
It's a pretty key level, especially if you are someone in the front office that, isn't only concerned with spending money. So that's, I believe that number is going to be 277 million in 2024. So they have roughly $40 million in room, and that doesn't include, some of the guys that we were talking about, a rotation spot. They have to sign another pitcher. So trying to fit a $45 million contract or a $55 million contract for Shohei Ohtani in that
doesn't seem like that would.
It.
Yeah,
I don't see the room.
like that would work. Yeah. The Phillies offensively, like we talked about third base, like now Alec Bohm is not a bad player. I'm not saying that. He's a very interesting player, actually. If you're a team out there looking to find a guy at the right time to kind of unlock the raw power that's clearly there that he doesn't get to in games, but he does a lot of other things. He's not a good defensive third baseman, but you could stick him at first base and he could actually probably be average or better over there. And if you unlock the power, he does everything else. He makes contact. He controls the zone. Like, he's a really interesting guy. But if the Phillies were looking to upgrade over there at third base, there are a few options, and it obviously starts with Matt Chapman. But you look out on the trade market, you might be able to find some teams. Now, this is going to sound really odd, but the San Diego Padres are probably going to shop Juan Soto because the $33 million and because the extension issue and because of the inefficiency in that roster. But that's also a team that clearly, with the news that they actually went out and borrowed money, clearly doesn't like their cash flow situation. They have a third baseman in San Diego that could probably net them some help. I just wonder, and not necessarily that Philly fits here because it adds another $30 million deal, but I just wonder if that third base market doesn't get shaken loose beyond Matt Chapman on the free agent market this winter with potentially Manny Machado. Because if the Padres are ever going to move Machado, they have to do it now. And I just, not that I'm predicting that it happens, I just think if a team wants to fix their third base spot and they're willing to spend $30 million a year on it, that's the first call I would make. He's reliable. He's good. He still handles the position. He solves that spot for at least the next 3 to 5 years. So if there's a big market team out there willing to do it, I don't know. Again, I'm not sure how that fits in with Philly, but that could really shake up that third base because there's not a whole lot out there after Matt Chapman on the free agent market. I just think in the trade market, there could be some opportunities.
I like that. Can you imagine a big league outfield of Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber? Hold on. Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Juan Soto, and if emergency, break glass, Rhys Hoskins.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Oh, and then Bryce Harper with his bad elbow is also an option. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons that the Phillies probably don't make sense for some of the big ticket stars, but I love the idea of moving Machado. From afar, and I really don't have a good pulse on the Padres, it always kind of felt a little bit to me like Machado was the one trying to corral the kids in San Diego. At least that was kind of the optics of everything. So I think moving him might almost be counterproductive to what they're trying to do. But
except they don't even know who their manager is at this point. That team is in disarray. That team is in massive disarray. Like if that team,
I'll ask you a question: do the San Diego Padres regret signing Fernando Tatis?
Yeah, I think so. He was an embarrassment. He was out. He missed time because of suspension, missed time because of injury. Yeah, I think so.
I had put all that behind. He's a right fielder now.
He's good there, and he's a good player.
He's good, but he's a right fielder.
But yeah, I think they do.
How many right fielders are making? What is he making? 36?
Yeah, it's big. But here's the thing with that deal they signed him to. Like they didn't sign him they signed him as a shortstop, as if they were convinced he was going to stay there for like 8 years at least.
Yeah.
That's the weirdest part of this. What, 14 million, 14 years and 338 million, something like that, with some of those seasons where the salary was actually reduced because of the PED suspension. I think I read the other day, 338. That's a lot of money for a kid who age really isn't the issue here, who really seemed like a guy who wasn't going to stick it short anyway. So you got to start thinking, is this a third base thing? And then when you sign Manny Machado, you're like, okay, third base isn't it? So you're down to the corner outfield spots.
He made improvements at shortstop. What was weird for me was he came back this season and they were quick to put him in right field. They didn't even give him reps at shortstop. And I just think if you're looking at, how old is he? 24? If you're looking at you have 12 more years, 11 more years of a 24-year-old right fielder, a position on the field that is historically the second easiest to replace production at.
Sure.
Man, like he'd be better served in center or at shortstop, or maybe they move Machado and they put him at third. But as things stand, that is an awful, awful contract.
And I do wonder if that was just a this year thing. Like push him. It was just like, let's give him extra time to get beyond the injuries, to get beyond and it'll allow us to shuffle our roster around. Like, now, don't get me wrong. Like he's exceptionally good in right field, like exceptionally good. Like I'm not a big defensive metrics guy, especially when you look at 1 year defensive metrics, but in a little under 1,200 innings in right field, the defensive runs saved metrics has him at plus 29. I've never seen that. I've never seen that in my life. That's crazy, man.
You got to go back to like Ichiro.
Yeah, like I'm not even sure Ichiro did. I'm not sure. Maybe he did, but I'm looking at that 29. I'm thinking, geez, like. But you got to think a guy that athletic can play third base. So if the shoulder is okay, the arm is okay, you might think, yeah, okay, everything's fine here, and maybe he can play third base. But that means moving Manny Machado. At least moving Manny Machado somewhere. It doesn't have to be off the roster, but somewhere. Yeah, that Padres.
I mean,
team
to your point, I think if I was the Padres, and it probably isn't something they want to hear, but I would move Ha-Seong Kim. I think you could get a lot for Ha-Seong Kim with 1 year of control left at $7 million. I know it doesn't shave the payroll that you want to, but there are other ways to shave the payroll.
Part of the reason why they want to shave the payroll is so they can make the team better. So if Kim doesn't help the payroll part, but helps you get better and helps you get better with cheaper players, then you can essentially.
That's what I'm saying.
It's 1 year plus a mutual option, and obviously you'd expect him to try to get out of that so he can make bigger money. But it would give you time to try to extend him if you really like.
And it gives you the ability to put Tatis back at shortstop.
It does, although I wouldn't do that. I'm done there. Yeah, I'm done.
Well, that's a problem. That's operationally, that's a problem.
Yeah,
for that organization.
If he's not at least an average defensive third baseman for you, that's actually playing third base, at least, the contract was a mistake. But I thought it was at the time. I thought they dove into that too quickly, too steeply at the time. Even what was he, 21 or whatever when he signed, 22 when he signed it.
Been watching the Braves too much.
Watching the Braves. So really quickly before we get out of here. Free agency. Joe, I know you've been talking to some folks about the market. It's all I've been doing since the end of September, trying to get takes on the market, and been having some fun getting front offices tell me that they think Cody Bellinger's getting $200 million, which I don't disagree with. I think it's fun to hear them speak that aggressively of the market. I think that's the biggest thing I'm hearing right now is that the market is going to be player. It's going to favor the player. It's going to be another aggressive free agent market.
Yeah. What I keep. So I'll quiz you first and then I'll tell you what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And it can be anybody, but think back 2 years. Michael A. Taylor comes off the board like 12 hours into free agency. Like it was something crazy.
Sure.
If you could just circle a random guy who's off the board on Monday, and I'll give you a second to think about it. Let me tell you who I think it's going to be. And I have no reason to believe this. I think Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is just going to come off the board next week. I don't know why. He just seems like a guy that can play every position. He does a little bit of everything well. He's kind of that guy that I think, I don't know, someone's going to give him a
I get it.
2-year, $9 million deal. I don't know. It's kind of a fun exercise.
Yeah, I get it. If I were to guess or make some sort of a wager, I would think, because there aren't any top tier catchers, I would think the catcher market might be an opportunity there. Like if you think Mitch Garver at 33 can start 90 plus games for you in 2024, that might be a guy, and you have a legit need for like a number one catcher. I would think a guy like Mitch Garver would make some sense. Had a really good year in 2023 with Texas, one of the better years of his career. But I would think a reliever, that would be my best guess, would be a reliever, and probably somebody right in that kind of Falefa range, like a Robert Stevenson,
Yeah,
who had a good year in Tampa. Maybe somebody like David Robertson, who knows where he wants to play, who's 39 years old, still pretty good. One of the top 20 relievers in baseball last year. Again, I imagine he could find a home pretty quickly because he's been around and he knows exactly where he wants to go. One of the more interesting relievers to me this year, and it's mostly a projection, is Fujinami. I'm really interested to see where Shintaro ends up playing and what team says, hey, we think there's more here. He was relatively ordinary, but I love that guy's delivery, and I think there's a lot more there for somebody to go get. I know he's 30, and he's bounced around already. He's played, split last season with between Oakland and Baltimore, but he's really, really interesting to me. And the Japanese lefty, the reliever, Yuki Matsui, is really interesting to me too.
Yeah,
more of a late innings guy. Like I could see, and I know the Japanese, guys tend to take longer, but I could see him in particular, because he's a reliever only, signing relatively quickly with the club.
All good answers. I will say, I gave a utility guy. You gave relievers. This is the worst podcast episode in the history.
All right, so really quickly, in a minute or less,
yeah,
pick a guy that you think out of the top 20 to 25 ish free agents signs first.
Give me Kenta Maeda. I think he's probably in that.
You think he's a top? Well, first of all, you think he's a top 20, 25 free agent?
No, but I think he's a top 20 pitcher. Okay.
Already.
All right. If we want to do everyone, how about Brandon Crawford? Is he kind of in that? Is he kind of in that zone? I'm still not even close to the top 20. Am I?
Interesting. No.
Let me try one more time. Let me try one more time.
I mean, I would think between.
Right. I'll go with Harrison Bader.
Okay. Just because it's hilarious. Hilarious. I will tell you right now, I have him ranked 43rd.
That's fine.
That's fine. You can. I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm just saying I just think it's funny.
I just don't see any of these dudes signing very fast. They never do. But I think for a guy that plays like a double plus brand of center field defense, a team like Toronto is going to be like, oh, we lost Kiermaier. We got to go get a 7 glove in center or something like that. So
Kiermaier is another good guess, although that's not a top 25 free agent, but that's another good. He's still at 34 years old, really, really good in center field. So he and Harrison Bader very, very similar in that way.
Javi Baez is going to opt out.
I could go best joke of the day. I could cop out and say Clayton Kershaw, because I think he's going to make a decision and re-sign with the Dodgers. But I'm going to say Candelario. I think he's right there in that 20 to 25 range. Had a 3-win season this past year. Passable at third base and short stint, so he's mostly a first baseman. I think somebody's going to see the value of him in like a 3/4 type role. You get a left-handed bat in your lineup. I'm going to say somebody like Candelario. That'd be my best guess. One of the things I don't think is going to happen early is a qualifying offer player signed. I don't think a guy that's an obvious QO tender like Blake Snell or somebody like that. I don't think that, or Aaron Nola, that guy's not signing first. I think teams, especially when you consider who's going to be after those players. I think teams, as we move forward, this as well as anybody, Joe, are trying to consider a little bit more, not necessarily prioritize it, but consider it more, protecting their draft, protecting their farm system, protecting their future. And I think they think twice a little bit about jumping all over that. Maybe I can get this same player, maybe literally the same player, but maybe I can get this same player without actually giving up that compensation.
Like, do I need this guy for the Angels?
Do I need this guy this winter? Right? Do I need this guy this winter? Or can I trade for him? Is he going to sign a 2-year deal and then I can just trade for him? Or is he a guy who I have to get now for $8 and $200? Like, I think that's the thing.
Yeah. I think there's going to be several qualifying offers extended, and I think the Angels will sign all of them.
And then in their draft, with their 4 remaining draft picks, they will select all second basemen.
With the 411th pick of the draft, the Angels' first pick of the draft.
First exactly.
They pick a 5th-year senior out of the University of New Mexico Valley State.
Oh boy.
You guys are in good shape.
Yeah. So really quick before we go, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. There's a lot of talk about him getting as much as $200 million this winter. I get it. He's 25. So if you're wondering why some of the projections on him are $200 million while Aaron Nola is getting $140 or whatever that turns into, it's because there's a 5-year difference in age there. Yamamoto's really, really interesting. Undersized right-hander with big-time stuff. I think that aside from aggressive market, the Japanese players being valued really, really highly. And we'll throw Jung-Hoo Lee in here too. Like, I think he's more of the ilk of a younger Kevin Kiermaier or Harrison Bader, even though he doesn't have the plus defense and might end up having to play left field. He's more along those lines. But him being 25 is a big deal, and that's why I have him ranked as a top 20 free agent. Those players don't come with that draft pick compensation too, obviously. So if you're out there and you need a frontline starter and you think Yamamoto is a frontline starter, you're probably going to be more willing to give him 200 than Aaron Nola 150, right? Like, you got to be convinced he's that kind of guy, but at 25 years old, he's not even done getting better. I think Aaron Nola is what he is at this point. So aggression is what I keep hearing on the free agent market. I keep saying this about some of the other clubs in the game too. Like, I think, as I sit here in Seattle, I think it's a mistake every day that passes that the Mariners don't do something to add to the mix, because there's impact that they need to add there in multiple players. So every time a day passes and something doesn't happen, it feels like a mistake to me. That does not necessarily just free agency, but trade as well. They have so much to do that if they don't start early, like, they're going to run out of options. Like, it's the whole musical chairs thing. Don't be left standing without a chair. I think the Giants, if they're going to do the damage they want to do, they have to get started early. And I don't mean they need to make 4 deals on Monday, but I think it's going to be aggressive sooner than later. I don't think we're going to have to wait until Christmas for a lot of this stuff to happen. I think we're going to get a couple of big deals before Thanksgiving, even certainly before the winter meetings. I think we're going to get trades during the winter meetings. I think we're going to get trades before Christmas. I think it's going to be one of the most boring Januaries in the history of planet Earth when it comes to baseball, because I think just about everything else is going to be done. I think there are too many teams out there that have put themselves in a position to where they feel comfortable spending at least some money and making some trades. I think even a team like Detroit could be really aggressive, sign a player, make a significant trade. And if you want to get done, what's on your list, you can't sit around and wait until the winter meetings are over. Like, you absolutely can't do that. So, that's a good question. Casey just sent a message. When does Ohtani sign? You got a feel on that before we log off here, Joe? It's like the parting shot today is, do you have a best guess on when Ohtani signs?
I mean, conventional wisdom would tell you probably not until like right after Christmas or in January. But I think, and this narrative is played out, I think Shohei probably knows the 2 or 3 teams that he's actually interested in, and he's known for a long time, and those conversations have probably been taking place behind closed doors between his agency and teams. I think we're probably going to get an Ohtani deal before Christmas.
Yeah.
And I still think there's 3 teams that are actually involved. So
Dodgers and who else?
I think the Giants would like to be involved.
Yep.
And I think Seattle is I think Seattle is set up to be involved quite nicely, and with the history of the team, I think they're a player.
Yeah. Interesting 3 teams. Those would be, in some order, probably the 3 teams for me too right now. I think Texas is going to want to get involved here too, which is really interesting as well. But we'll see. I would say Ohtani signs before December 15th. You get the winter meetings out of the way. Yep. I think the 6th is the last day of the winter meetings. Our favorite event, the Rule 5 draft on December 6th, by the way. And I think the week after that is when it gets done. Those 7 to 10 days after the winter meetings is when Ohtani gets done.
Why aren't we talking more about Cody Bolton? That's the news.
I mean, that's big
first
time.
deal of the winter.
That's big. I mean, the Mets picking up Penn Murphy. I mean, that's like
Juggernaut.
they're fixed. They're fixed, man. They're fixed. The Mets are fixed. Francisco Lindor's finally has the support he needs to win in Flushing.
And let me add this just before we go. I think on the Yamamoto train, everything that I'm hearing, all the national writers keep pushing out the same 6 to 7 teams. Oh, these GMs were in to see him. I think the Orioles are going to be in on that. I think the Diamondbacks could be in on that. I think the Nationals could be in on that.
Let me tell you one team. Let me tell you one team that's planning to that plans to get him, and that's the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros believe they're going to get him.
That doesn't surprise me. But the Houston Astros also don't have as much space to play with as some of the other teams. Seattle and St. Louis. I think Seattle and St. Louis are going to be so heavy on Yamamoto that they're going to be 2 of the real players to watch out for.
$200 million big ticket right-hander. He's fun to watch too, man. That's an athletic dude. I mean, that's good stuff. I love watch. Generally, the Japanese pitchers are really fun to watch. Senga is fun to watch. Tanaka was fun to watch. Nomo was fun to watch. They just bring a different kind of the different deliveries, the pace. The stuff, the pitches are literally different. I generally have a lot of fun watching those guys pitch. So interesting, good stuff. Hey, when we convene next week, I'm gonna say one free agent is signed for at least $15 million AAV. That's my prediction. I'm not gonna make you make a prediction, but that's my prediction. Between now and next weekend, we're gonna have one player that's going to make at least $15 million on AAV. He's going to sign. And I don't mean accepting the QO. I think we're actually going to have a free agent signing to talk about next week. Am I crazy?
Be Michael Wacha.
Yeah. So he's going to, so the option's going to be gone and he's going to re-sign with the Padres, right? It's going to be boring. I think players re-signing with their teams are boring, like for the rest of baseball anyway, because there's nothing new to think about. It's like a walk back to the Padres, but it's different if like he signs with like the Yankees. You're like, okay, so what are the Yankees trying to do here? There's a conversation to have. If he goes back to San Diego, it's boring.
Yeah, that is boring, but that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. $15 million is the key here, though. $15 million a year AAV. That's the key.
All right.
All right.
I like it.
We'll forget that I said this and we won't talk about this. So I just feel like it's totally fine that I throw that out there. I can't be wrong because nobody's going to shove it in my face. And now some listener is going to be like, I listened. I'm one of the 3 people that listened and you were wrong. Good stuff. Fun stuff. Now. The hot stuff. Now Casey's going to, and I know you would remember. Jeez,
Casey keeps receipts.
He does keep receipts. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. That's all for us today. We're done. We got to get out of here. Otherwise, this will just be me trying to tell Casey as little as possible. I don't want to do that. For Casey Bellin, for Joe Doyle, I'm Jason Churchill. This has been the FSS Plus podcast.
So just chill till the next episode.